I'm Tom.
We are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Now, Tom.
Yes.
We talk a lot about genres on YouTube channel, Velocities in Music, the thing we do with most of our free time. So, you know, genres are something that I think people are very particular about.
Yes.
There's something that people put a lot of stock into the words that you use to describe music because I think it kind of gives a connotation to the sound you might hear if you picked up an artist with this tag on it. I vehemently hate genres. I think that it puts too many, it sets those connotations are the very things that we need to like take away from people.
Tear the wall down.
Tear the wall down. Come into music with an open mind. Evaluate how it was written and how
and no predispositions.
Right.
Yes.
So one thing I love about the band Fuck Buttons is that they are very much considered experimental. But what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to anyone.
It's not even a genre, it's an adjective.
It's an adjective. That's right.
It's a descriptor.
And you know what? That's my sort of labeling that I like, because you can't put that in a box. They're experimental. That means I'm probably going to like it, to be honest with you. And now, Fuck Buttons. Their new album, Slow Focus, just came out last week. Tom and I picked it up, reviewed it. Now, and to be honest with you, when Velocities in Music was just getting started like 3 years ago, we actually reviewed their second album from 2009, which was called Tarot Sport, and we didn't like it. Now, in all fairness, Tom and I weren't the best reviewers back then. We've hopefully, when you let you guys be the judge, we've hopefully gotten better since then. However, we gave that a 60 out of 100, and I would still say that if I were to score that today, it would still be in the 60s, might be upper 60s.
Yeah, there are a lot of albums back then that I've changed my tune on, or as we have kind of developed our scoring system a little more, maybe would give it a different score. I'm still pretty close to that score on that one. I'm not a huge fan.
You know Fuck Buttons sound is experimental. Yeah. It's hard to drill into how to describe it with one word other than that. But that album was all about just the same sound over and over and over again. And while this album is also, Slow Focus is also 7 tracks, Tarot Sport was just 7 tracks, and you had these super long tracks that then just repeated a whole bunch, and it was just these sounds that were kind of cool at first, but it was all about the sound and not about the songwriting. And for those of you that watch Velocities in Music on a regular basis, we just destroy artists who focus on their sound more than their songwriting, because they're both very important in music. You can't have one without the other, and so many artists right now are focused on sound rather than songwriting, and so the balance is all out of whack. Now, first thing I want to address on Slow Focus is there's so much more attention to songwriting. They still present a great sound, but Tom, how would you describe the sound on Slow Focus?
Well, it's still mainly electronic. Now, I want to say real quick, we talked about genres a bit. I would separate this entirely from your traditional electronica genre as it comes into play, mainly because of the way they construct their songs. It's not quite dance, but there are some dancey elements, but they focus a little bit more on mood and more on the evolution of the track. As it moves along, what does it do? How does it evolve and change from one section to another? Now, getting into kind of the production and general sound aesthetic of this album, I think it's very different from Tarot Sport. And one thing that I didn't like about Tarot Sport is that when you listen to it, it was all about this overblown, grating, abrasive, kind of high-end, high mid-range sound that just really sounds tinny on your ears. And I didn't like it that much. I didn't think there was a lot of balance. Right away from the first track, Brain Freeze, on Slow Focus, you get a sense that they're thinking of things much more evenly. There's a big emphasis on this low-end beat that sounds very real. It sounds very organic, kind of tribal even. And it helps move the song along. Then you have this kind of, I don't want to say glittery, but a little sharper of a synth sound that comes in and sets up kind of the melody line for the first bit
and they
of the
do
song.
a lot of cool textures with guitars and things. But one thing that on this album I was particularly surprised with is their attention to detail with dynamics. I really felt that the dynamic contrast they present gave a depth to the music that you didn't see on their previous efforts. Now, this album, with all Fuck Buttons releases, you have to keep in mind, this is experimental. This is no vocalist. It's just instruments. And when you have an instrumental album, you just inherently don't have that emotional connection to the vocals because there are no vocals. So where do you derive?
Not the human element.
Yeah, right.
Or
So
the performance element.
where do you attach to the music? It becomes a bigger challenge to attach to the music, and for the artist, it becomes a much greater challenge to find ways of making your instrumentation so gripping that you bring people in and they have a connection with your music. This is something that post-rock tackles like just feet first, and they just absolutely just try to sculpt these songs so that they grab your attention, they bring you in, they make you pay attention to the music, and then they really give you an emotional resonance out of it. Now, one thing I noticed on Slow Focus is Fuck Buttons actually do that. They do a very good job of building the tracks and adding in layer after layer after layer, and by the end of the track, a lot of these tracks are these giant builders that are paced very nicely. They add layers in very nicely. The intensity is constantly rising, and by the end of it, like, you're in it, you're vested, and really they provide a lot of warmth, I feel, for what they're doing and how they approach their sound.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even the longer tracks, which the two longest tracks are at the very end. The very last track, Hidden X's, I think is definitely a highlight.
Oh, that was
of
my
this
favorite
album.
song on this album.
Yeah, and just the way it flows works perfectly.
And it's 10 minutes long.
Yeah, this is a fairly long album when you put it all together. Like I said, the last two tracks being the longest, but it doesn't feel too long. It doesn't get boring. I think that they really had the tact here to know when the listener is going to maybe get a little bored and kind of trail off with their listening. They rope them back in and do something interesting. I actually said the same thing recently about John Murray, Graceless Age. Completely different genre, but you had some longer tracks there, and they knew exactly when to mix it up a little bit. I think that's something that artists really need to hone in on and think about their listener rather than just getting indulgent. I never thought that this album got indulgent. It was very interesting. They mix up the sound palette, they mix up the production style, the compositional style, just across 7 tracks. Between the tracks, within the tracks, it made for a very engaging listen, and I was really impressed with it.
Well put.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
What do you think about the production?
The production, I really liked.
So they self-produced this one.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
I think it's a good direction for them to go in. We rip on artists for self-producing a lot because it doesn't always end up good.
It doesn't always work, but they did it right here, and I think it paid off because I thought that the last album was overproduced.
Yeah, so, I totally agree. It was all out of balance, and this one felt so even and so particular. I love how they brought everything out in the mix.
Nice job, Fuck Buttons. We're on board with this one. I'm going 83.
I'm going 82.
You're a wiener.
I'm sorry, I'm the wiener this time.
You're the wiener. So 83 from Velocities of Music because we round up to whatever my score is. We just round up.
My score doesn't matter.
Right, so essentially your score doesn't matter. Thanks for playing though.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about Slow Focus? Leave us a comment at www.velocitiesofmusic.com, our humble website that catalogs every review we've ever done, and we actually update it weekly, and it's a lot of work. So please check it out. We'd love to get you guys out there. And also on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/velocitiesofmusic. Also follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums from 2013 you guys have been digging lately and would like to see us review. We're actually coming up with a dry period of new releases coming out. So if you guys have requests right now, we'd love to hear them, and we'll get them on our queue for review. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.